Ottumwa Board of Health meeting at 5:30 to order, and I would ask Amanda to take the roll.
Councilmember Dalby.
Here.
Councilmember Rowe.
Here.
Councilmember Stevens.
Here.
Councilmember Strebe.
Here.
Mayor Lazio.
Here.
Approve the minutes for meeting number 3 on October 20th, 2015 is presented. Recommendation, approve the minutes.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve the minutes. Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
This is the time, place, and date set to consider condemnation of the structures on the lot located at 502 Lee Avenue. I received no objections on this item.
Good evening, Jody. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. 502 Lee belongs to Michael Headley, and he is deceased. It was placarded on August 20th, 2015 due to fire damage, and Tom Rogers has a picture that he's going to put up for you. Nothing's been done to repair this structure, and an estate has not been opened, and we have no reason to believe that an estate will be opened on this property. Therefore, staff's recommending condemnation and removal of all the structures.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to address this issue? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Second. Thank you.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
Condemn the structures located at 502 Lee Avenue, order prompt demolition, removal, and leveling of the lot, and direct all costs attendant to such actions, including administrative costs, to be assessed against the property and/or collected from the owner or owners thereof.
Is there a motion?
Approve the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, any questions for Jody? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll need a motion to adjourn the meeting unless there's other business for the Board of Health.
Move to adjourn. Second.
Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Councilmember Stevens.
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe.
Yes.
5:33. At this time, I'd like to call the regular council meeting to order. Remind people to turn their cell phones to vibrate or silent. Ask everybody to stand, do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Amanda, would you take the roll, please?
Councilmember Stevens.
Here.
Councilmember Strebe.
Here.
Councilmember Dalby.
Here.
Councilmember Myers. Councilmember Rowe.
Here.
Mayor Lazio.
Here.
Items on the consent agenda. Minutes from regular meeting number 1 on January 5th, 2016 is presented. Acknowledge December financial report and payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department. Appointment of Mary Ann Ryder to the Planning and Zoning Commission, term to expire 4/20/2021, and Chuck Manson to the Waterworks Board of Trustees, term to expire 7/22/2022. Recommendation on the National Registry eligibility for the nomination of the Greater 2nd Street Historic District, located at 201 to 315 East 2nd Street, 116 North Green Street, 109 South Green Street, and 106 to 112 North Market Street in Ottumwa, Iowa, for the National Register of Historic Places. Payment to Computer Information Systems Incorporated, the amount of $13,200 for a 1-year license renewal and maintenance agreement for the police department's in-house computer software. Resolution number 7, 2016, approving the agreement for use of local agency roads for incident management temporary due to routes with the DOT. Resolution number 12, 2016, providing for the financial support of the Area 15 Regional Planning Commission for fiscal year 2016-2017. Resolution number 15, 2016, approving and accepting the work as final and complete for the fire department ventilation improvements. Resolution number 18, 2016, approving applications for residential and commercial tax abatement under the Urban Revitalization Plan, subject to review by the local assessor. Resolution number 19, 2016, approving the application of Plastipack Holding Incorporated to the Iowa Economic Development Authority High Quality Job Program. Resolution number 25, 2016, setting a public hearing on the council's intent to provide a lease of city-owned property to a base operator at the Ottumwa Regional Airport. Resolution number 27, 2016, authorizing the destruction of certain records according to the Code of Iowa 2015 as amended and the Iowa Municipal Records Manual. Beer and/or liquor applications for Hy-Vee Food Store number 1, 1025 North Quincy Avenue, Fairway Stores number 648, 1325 Albia Road, Dollar General Store number 7179, 721 North Quincy Avenue, Dollar General Stores number 2898, 921 East Main Street, Recovery Room, 1805 West 2nd Street, Casey's General Store number 1678, 346 Richmond, all applications pending final inspections.
Is there a motion?
Move the consent agenda.
Second. Thank you. Any questions about any item on the agenda?
Your Honor, I have a question on item number 6, approving the agreement for the use of local agency roads. And this will probably be for you, Larry. I was just noticing when I was reading through this that this would be for certain instances or incidents. They said for crash, fire, stuff like that. But then when you read down an actual state code that you provided in the packet, it said for basically any reasons except for those. There's kind of a contradiction there. So my question is what would this detour route be for? I know there's some work going out there on the bridge by Venture Drive and Walmart and that type of stuff. What does exactly all this entail?
What they need is assurances from the city once they start the construction and detour the route around to the new bridge that's just south of the existing one. And what we're talking about is the DOT bridge that's just west of the city limits on 34. Everybody can see that they built a temporary bridge, but it sets quite a bit lower. And what they're concerned about and prepare for is every possible condition. If, for instance, a tanker truck loaded with fuel would happen to go off there and catch on fire. But the real concern is if it floods and it inundates the bridge because it sets so much lower than the roadway. Like a lot of agencies, they try to minimize their expense. So when they come in to do a temporary bridge to handle the traffic during the construction of the main bridge, they try to reduce their cost. One of that is to lower it. So that's really what it covers. This route would only be used if there was an accident on the bridge and they needed to route the traffic until a tow truck gets there, or a biohazard happens there, or a flood, something happens that causes it to where they cannot use the bridge they built for its intended purposes of bypassing the traffic.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions about items on the agenda?
I noticed the exhaust system for the fire department that's up and going and working okay, I assume, Chief? Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions, take the roll, please.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Item C, we need approval for tonight's agenda. Is there a motion?
So move.
Second.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Item D are reports from city officers, boards, commissions. I'd like to turn the floor over to City Administrator Andy Morris, who's going to make some comments.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is an item that I mentioned at our previous meeting, and that is the contract that the City of Ottumwa has with Ottumwa Area Economic Development Agency, their Economic Development Group. And there's a contract that stipulates that the city is to have presentations from their director on a quarterly basis. If we had done that according to plan, then that would have taken place sometime during the month of January. Sharon Stroh, the ED director, and I have been in consultation about dates to have those meetings. You may recall from the previous meeting with council, I asked the mayor to look into the thoughts of council members as to whether or not we would have presentations with Ms. Stroh in front of the city council, or though there would be individual meetings with her again to discuss prospects. And I think the mayor's suggestion and I don't know if you have it in front of you or not, but in my weekly report, I indicated the conversations I've had, not only with the mayor, but also with Sharon Stroh, and that is, quite frankly, to do both of them. And that would be this. The meetings with council will take place on a quarterly basis. The next meeting that we would have, again, would be the 2nd of February. Sharon Stroh will be before the council then to share with us some of her economic development activities. I realize there are prospects that she's probably working on. She can't go into great detail, but still she will be before us. And again, I'll make sure that we get back to having those on a quarterly basis. If memory serves me, I believe the next meeting would be in April. In addition to that, I will be meeting with her on a twice a month basis, approximately every 2 weeks. I will visit with her and again report back to council. I think that's a good feedback because you're going to see her presentation in terms of the project she's working on. And obviously, the results of my reports will be shared with council. I think it's a positive step to take both of those opportunities to have meetings and fulfill that contract. Mr. Mayor, I don't have anything else unless either you or council members have any questions or comments to that end.
Any questions for Andy? Okay, thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to ask our Public Works Director, Larry Seals, to step to the microphone and talk to us about the update on the mitigation program.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. What we wanted to do, I've got Ted Pacer and Todd Peniston from V&K here. We wanted to give a general update on the FEMA project that's been occurring now for several years. The original grant, of course, we applied in 2008, and we wasn't awarded until 4 years later. So we just kind of want to recap where we're at in that project. We're actually starting to wind down the major construction. We've got it divided into 4 contracts. I think what I'll do is we'll turn it over and go through the PowerPoint presentation and then come back and answer questions. And it's also just to kind of give a general update to the public and keep that fresh in everybody's mind, considering how much inconvenience it has caused just because of the size of it and the scope of these projects. I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little more. One of the things that we did, just again for general public information, we was originally awarded like $16,222,100 for the total project scope. We were able to go back because it took 4 years to get the grant application approved by the federal government. And then about 1 year, they give us 3 years to do design and construction. It took about 1 year to get the first contract designed, let, and under construction. So we were able to go back after we seen what type of construction prices that we received and get the grant increased to $20,339,235. And again, the federal portion would be $15,254,425 or 75%, and we had about $4,025,000 that was CDBG, and then the balance would be local funds. With that, I'll turn it over to Todd, and he can kind of walk you through his slide presentation.
As Larry mentioned, I'm Todd Peniston with Vance Kim, project manager. This is Ted Pacer, as Larry had mentioned, for those of you that haven't met us before. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you tonight to talk, just kind of provide an update of the project, where it's at. As Larry mentioned, it is getting close to being wrapped up. That will happen later this summer. You can go into the next slide, Ted. Yeah, hit spacebar. You can go ahead and go to the next one. Larry mentioned that already. As Larry mentioned, we did do a budget increase a little over a year ago that brought us up to the current dollar amounts that Larry. You can get the next one. And this is for those who may not be real familiar with the project, this is an overall view of the project itself. We broke it up into what we call 4 contracts, contracts 1 through 4. Contract 1 was a larger diameter storm sewer on Main Street, extending east-west or basically west of the intersection of McLean and Main Street, and then also extended south along Main Street, south across the railroad tracks. And contract 2 was a stormwater pump station we put in south of the Coca-Cola building down by Tenco, if you're familiar with that area. The system itself is broken up into what we called a pressure sewer system, which everything above elevation 650 down there, which is basically Main Street and above, is collected through the storm sewer systems that were built as part of contract 1 and 4. As you can kind of see up into the hills there, that was part of contract 4. That whole system is collected into a pressure sewer system and actually has enough force on it from the elevations coming down through from the hills to force its way out in the river without being pumped. And then the second system, which is part of contract 2, which was, like I mentioned, was a stormwater pump station, and part of contract 4, which is a storm sewer system along Gateway Drive. That's the system that's tied into the pump station. So any rain that falls within that basin between Main Street and the river gets collected by that system and is pumped to the river. You can keep going, Ted. And then contract 3 was the flood wall that you may or may not be familiar with. And here's a kind of a breakdown of what the costs were for contract 1. Division 1 were the FEMA eligible portion of the project, the storm sewer pipe, intakes and so forth. And then there were some other water main and some other issues or other portions of the project that were part of the project, but were not FEMA participating. And that was completed last past summer. And here's some pictures of contract 1 as it was under construction. This is along, I believe, McLean Street, north of the railroad tracks. And that's in the intersection of McLean and Main Street. There was a large conflict structure we put in that. This part was being constructed there. And this is kind of a finished product along, kind of by the VFW there along McLean Street looking south towards the river. And then, as I mentioned, contract 2 is a stormwater pump station. We broke it up into 2 divisions. One was the FEMA participating items. Division 2 were the items such as water main and some other items that were not FEMA participating. It did reach substantial completion this past fall. We have tested the stormwater pump station, and right now we've got only a small number of intakes tied into it. And the contract 4 that is currently under construction, if you've had the opportunity to Gateway Drive, they're building the rest of that storm system right now, which they'll be done with that later this summer. And this is a picture here of the open pit excavation that that was part of the pump station construction. We had to actually physically tie the substructure, the concrete structure itself into rock, bedrock through using some rock anchors and so forth. This is what they're installing in this picture here. And this is additional, a few months later as they're starting to build the concrete structure itself with the reinforced concrete. And just kind of some more progression of during construction. And this is a picture after the pump station was up and running this back in December. To the left there, that large item there is the standby generator for the pump station itself, and then in the middle of the picture is the control room for the pump station. And on the back side, there's one of the gate wall structures. There's right where those trucks are parked. There's a 96-inch pipe that goes right underneath there. It goes straight out to the river. That's part of that system I mentioned earlier. That's the low pressure sewer system that. And then this is the bar screens as part of the pump station. The flow comes in to the left side of those bar screens, flows through the bar screens and into where the pumps are located, then gets pumped up over the levee and out to the river. And here's part of the day we were testing it, one of them back in December. Another picture there, some of the gate wall structures. And then that's the river outfall there for part of where the 96-inch comes into it. Then to the left of that is where the pump station pumps the water up through a channel and drops down into that same structure there, and all of it combines and goes out to the river from there. And as I mentioned, the contract 3 was a flood wall, which just recently reached completion this past fall. That is to protect the pumps, the water plant during a flood condition on the protected side of the levee. There's a picture where they're driving some pilings into the ground that were part of the substructure for the flood wall itself. And there's a kind of a finished product there. You can kind of see the sign on the side of the building. This is Ottumwa Water and Hydro, and then right out in front of that is the flood wall. It's got the lights decorating along the side of it there. There's a close-in shot of it there. And then contract 4, which I mentioned, is nearing construction or nearing completion now. They're working along Gateway Drive. It was broken up into 2 divisions: 2 FEMA participating items as Division 1, and then Division 2 that were non-participating. And it'll be completed later this summer. And here's some pictures of that construction. And then these pictures were taken just yesterday as they're working along Gateway Drive. They're putting a new storm sewer in on the south side of Gateway Drive going east-west. No, that'll all tie into the pump station. And Larry, you want to kind of talk about the amendment at this point?
Yeah. I think one of the things that really got glossed over was the challenge that we had when we started this project. You have to do what's called a cost benefit analysis. And one thing that FEMA has always made sure that we were aware of was if we exceeded that 1-to-1 benefit ratio, that they had the option to claw back their money, and at times almost seemed eager to do just that. So throughout this entire design and letting process, not only was we trying to juggle the overall cost of a project that the designs had not been completed because they were being designed as the first contract was under, then we went to contract 2, had it under construction and let, and so forth through the other 4. So the whole time we're playing with our numbers and, projected estimates to keep that cost benefit analysis, and some things we backed out of the project that we'd have liked to had. For instance, on contract 2 under the pump station, we would have liked to had that wet well enclosed and a few other items. That stuff was backed out prior to and during the design before we got the contract extension. Most likely we will come in at some point and look at what modifications might be needed depending on how we actually weather the cold weather as far as freezing around pumps and grates. One of the other things, because we were able not only to get the contract extended and the project cost increased to $20 million and odd dollars, we also extended it by a year for construction. Originally, our deadline was September of 2015. We were able to go back earlier in the year and get that extended basically a year to be able to complete it. What that means to us is the general services for inspection and contract management has increased. Our plan is to go back based on where our construction costs are and what we've seen and know is left to do for inspection and contract management, and get some money moved internally within the grant over into the engineering services. And that's where we're working with V&K to determine how many hours will that actually be and still be able to stay under that cost benefit analysis. So we're still kind of juggling to the very end to keep this a lively project. I would point out, it's obvious, but I think when you look at the amount of money that we received and how much we have to pay, the percent is extremely high.
I wish Councilman Myers was here because he's the sole survivor. We as of next month, we've worked for you for 10 years. And I was much taller and had
Speak right into the microphone, please, Ted.
I was much taller and had dark hair, Mayor, when we started 10 years ago. So I think we've accomplished a tremendous amount as a city, and we wanted to talk a little bit about the road ahead. We still have a compliance schedule. We still have another, I suppose, $15 million or more on it. The next project is due, I believe, in about 8 to 9 years as far as completion. But the mayor knows, and Andy has also attended some meetings. Water quality is a huge issue in the state of Iowa right now. And we have our governor proposing use of sales tax and such to fund some of the non-point. And it goes nicely into our compliance with CSOs because we have some opportunities in the city. And for those that are not familiar, we have a combined sewer system, which means that our stormwater and our sanitary are in the same pipe. And what we've been trying to do is separate it. And so that also means that some of our deep gullies and areas, we have creek and watershed draining into our sanitary system or storm sewer system. And so we have some opportunities in terms of flood control and also compliance to start looking at opportunities in terms of maybe water features, impoundments in some of these areas. And I encourage you to do that. And the mayor, we attended a very good preliminary meeting about what we do in terms of nitrates in the river and how this all works together. And we've seen the city of Dubuque, for example, come up with a plan to do some watershed work. And I would encourage you to do this. And as we had a nice meeting with Block Grant a few weeks ago, and what the state and the feds really appreciate about Ottumwa, rather than sitting back and complaining, you actually have done something. And they've rewarded us with how many dollars worth of grants, Larry?
That's what I'm looking at.
Okay. And he'll come, it's a substantial amount, something like $50 million. But you need to kind of keep your incentive going. You need to keep, be on top of the game and keep putting together some thoughts on where we go from here. And the idea, of course, is to reduce the cost to your ratepayers. So first of all, thank you for 10 years, and it's been interesting. We've met a lot of interesting people down here, but the job's not done, but we've come a long way in the last 10 years. And I'd be glad to answer any questions, and Larry will dig up the amount here, but it's a substantial amount, so.
On the sewer related, just specifically sewer related, not including all the outside grant amounts, it's about 29 million just on the phases. It's more than that.
I have a question, Mr. Pacer. Thank you for the work you've done hanging with the Ottumwa and Larry and all that and stuff. We still have a long ways to go, like you said. With the water quality issues we have coming up and the nitrates in the river and stuff, you said, we took a proactive approach as a city, and that was led by the mayor and city administrator. What are some of the ideas you talk about on staying proactive with that? What are some suggestions you have for what we?
I think in a couple ways, and if you look at it, Councilman, that first of all, the flooding and the intense rainfalls we get, it's something that we're going to have to deal with. And so we need to kind of start looking at what part that the city of Ottumwa plays in its own watersheds. And so we need to be looking at some of the non-point, the contribution, not only for contaminants, but also for water itself. And so if we can pick off some of that uncontrolled runoff, it helps us size our system appropriately and cost effectively. The rest of it gets to be that, and we did I thought it was a very good meeting, that I think we need to say that unlike maybe some of our neighbors to the north, we'd like to be part of the peace process rather than being in the courts. And so in my mind, that I think that's money better spent if we can get out in front of it and we become that leader and show leadership in that sense, Councilman.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Is there any additional questions? I mean, that was a fairly quick one. The annual report that I submitted and give you has a lot of detailed information along with specific maps of each area and what we tried to accomplish. That's a lot of good information. And if you have any questions on those, feel free to call our office and ask for, additional information. That's kind of an ongoing report that's just a summary of what we've completed and where we're at that we send to the DNR. There's 3 different offices that like to receive that. Actually, we're required under our long-term control plan to submit that annually. But it's a good way to track. It includes all of the amount of storm, the amount of intakes. It also contains the 9 minimum controls that we have to also report, which includes things like street cleaning, number of sewer backups on the actual public side, amount of debris picked up by street sweepers, amount of debris that we take out of intakes. So it's pretty comprehensive. It's still a condensed report, though. It just hits the highlights. One of the things that unfortunately is kind of glossed over in these type is the amount of work that's done in the background. Ted's briefly mentioned detention basins basically in the uplands. We had to submit 3 different versions of what possibly could be done with cost options just to submit this grant. That's where it goes to a 4-year process. So we kind of simplified it. Is there any additional questions or concerns or thoughts of what you'd like to see?
Larry, I have a quick question. One that just occurred to me. We've got a project in Harrows Branch I think we're all real familiar with. Are those some of the projects that we're talking about with runoff watersheds and detention basins that you were just talking about?
Those all go to water quality. In Harrows Branch is slightly different than in the branch just east of there. What we were talking about when we get into what's called Blake's Branch, which is more in the east end of town, comes out on Vine, goes down Birch, ultimately ends up behind the old Greenbrier or close to the Jeff Penn intersection. We will need to look in the uplands in that area and see what type of detention basins we can do. It all has to do with detaining your peak flow and slowing it down and releasing it over time. Because one of the things that even when we get through this compliance schedule, a lot of people think that, oh boy, when you're done with your 25-year long-term control plan, you're done. No, you're not. You know, you're going to look at what are your flows. Can you meet the 6 discharges or events per year along with the reduction? Because the thing we looked at was total volume and BOD loading to the river. It's all calculated. We still have to kind of refine that over time and quantify it and actually prove it to the DNR that we made our original goal. So there's a lot of work to be done. This is mostly a parallel storm system along with sanitary as needed. We still have a whole system to maintain. So there's a lot of costs going forward also.
One other follow-up to that too, and Mr. Pacer, you may be able to answer this. Water down. We talk about retention dams and basins. What does that have to do with water quality? Could you kind of tie that together so we have a better picture?
Exactly. Most of the contaminants in Iowa, it's sediment, it's runoff, it's topsoils, and what's contained thereof. You see a lot of discussions about, field tile drains and, bringing in the phosphorus and such, but the reality gets to be the turbidity. And so these basins, not only that they slow down the runoff, but also they function as sediment traps. And in some cases, you see some things in the county where they might do a series of them upstream to slow down the loss of topsoil. And so we don't have, first of all, as Cam will tell you, we can't treat dirt. And that's the reality of a lot of our combined sewer systems. And so when it makes its way down to our systems, either we have to take it out like we did in the north box, and that's how many tons, Larry? 5,200. 5,200 ton we took out of the north box. If it makes it to the plant, then CAM has to take it out at the plant, and it doesn't become a soil amendment. It's just soils. And so certainly if we can slow that down, and it's vegetation, and it's also trapping it. So it's really, and the other part of it is, and the mayor and Andy and I have had this discussion, you have to go to where you think the money is going to be. And flood control, green engineering, that's going to be, certainly for the rest of this century, is going to be a huge issue. And the reality is we should have been doing this a long time ago as far as the non-point. We wouldn't have the issues that we, but that's why, Councilman.
Thank you.
I would mention for the council's sake, and Larry, you and Ted can, we had the chance to go and see the Sugar Creek water detention watershed area. And while that's a much bigger scope and covers 4 counties, as I recall, the principle is the same. It slowed the water down. It cut down on the amount of maintenance and repair work counties and cities had to do. It holds the water, and I think you can extrapolate from that the fact that we as a city are going to have more and more regulation, and it's going to take more and more money that we need to be spending on other infrastructure as well. So I really do encourage you, if you have a chance, when we take this tour, it's an annual tour they've done with Sugar Creek, to see that. It'll help you to put some things in perspective. I think Mr. Morris had a comment or a question.
I just have a question. Thank you, Mayor. Larry, this is a topic that we spent some time talking about, and I know Ted is helped out on this tremendously, and not the least of which the work that Larry's done in that department. But again, I know council's seen this, but just relating back to discharges, the city's made a lot of progress since I was here the last time on stormwater remediation, particularly with the CSOs. And Larry, I'd just be curious as your thoughts, and maybe Ted wants to chime in this as well. But one of my understandings is that one way you can measure progress, the progress the city has made, are the discharges. Could you, without going into a great deal of detail, could you talk a little bit about how we use that as a measurement tool to, quite frankly, measure for success?
Sure. I mean, ultimate goal would be to get to where we do not have the discharges at the CSO. Currently, we have flow monitors that measure the intensity of a flow and the duration. We'll look at that over time, and that'll really tell us how successful we are. I mean, there's other things. Our first cut was to go through the city and pull all the intakes off. We have, and it's listed in your annual report, how many intakes each of these systems included, and that's fairly definable by what they're capable of taking and transporting. So that's one measurement. The other measurement, of course, is through the 9 minimum controls, because all this stuff is interrelated, is how many public sewer backups do we have? And as you see that we get the system cleaned and we're lining a great deal of it and replacing others depending on the structural integrity of the pipe, there's a whole method and process and different constructions that we can do to get to that end. I do want to kind of spring back to the Soap Creek watershed that the mayor was describing. We did just that, and this more ties into the big picture, and it ties into what Ted was talking about, turbidity reduction. That is why the city of Ottumwa is currently in and has an MS4 permit. That's not something you go out and seek. That's something the state gives you. Kettle Creek was a perfect example of what we did there, and it has to do with, and everybody in this city has seen how much soil has been transported down Kettle Creek, and that's through the Wildwood Park and the whole Kettle Creek drainage ditch out into the rural section. We did what in 2008, a WERB grant, which included ripple structures, bank armor, and retention basins. Very similar to what they did in the Soap Creek watershed as far as the detention basins. All that means in the rural area, it's a pond, and they have a couple foot of freeboard that can raise and it can absorb the high peak flow and discharge it over time. Same way with the current one that's in Memorial Park Pond. You store water, you slow down, you reduce the peak, you prevent or try to prevent down cutting, bank sloughing, active faces that move soil, which causes turbidity, which is the water pollutant, and that is one of them that's in the lagoon. That was one of the issues we was cited for, was turbidity. So all of this stuff is interconnected on water quality and reduction of delivery of soil to the water bodies or to the treatment plant, that CAM has to deal with. So everything's interrelated. Each branch is slightly different, but similar.
Kind of a scorecard, Andy, and this is just an ancillary comment, that when we started on the south side, there was as many as 200 basin backups. When we had rainfall, we don't have those anymore. Now, that isn't necessarily what CSO says, but as far as for your citizens, that's a real positive thing. Because of the work of the city and staff, John Deere got 62 acres of combined off of our system. And so all these things, and what we need to get to, and we try it on the annual report, we need to be able to say, here we are perhaps halfway through our decree, but we need to be able to say, yes, we've seen a reduction in flows. We've seen a reduction in CSOs. Also, Snapple, of course, has been working on pre-treatment, and that will reduce the organic discharge into the river. And that's forthcoming. I know they're working on that. So all those things, but you need to monitor them. And then also you need to be able to convince the citizens that if I have an issue, maybe it's stormwater related, maybe it's basement backups, that we're going to be able to reconfigure our thoughts and into streets, storm sewers, and some of these other issues that have perhaps been lagging the same 10-year period. But so a scorecard says, and then it convinces me that some good things have been going on, and we hope they have for the money being spent.
I think I would like to recognize both the leadership of our own staff and previous councils, because if we hadn't done this, we'd be in a lot worse position today. And I think sometimes we forget that in all the work we're doing and trying to keep the lights on day to day. But it's been a Herculean effort to get all this done. And I said something to a gentleman today about he was wondering why our streets, need more repair. And I said, well, we've spent a lot of money on infrastructure. You just can't see it. And I think that's the myth sometimes, that people don't see the sewers, the 10-foot sewers. They don't see the pump stations. I mean, Larry took us down and showed us the pump station behind Coca-Cola, and that was just phenomenal to see that in its progression and what that will do for the whole West End.
Well, and that's a really good point, Mayor. When you look at that, we are doing, a flood protection project that the ancillary benefits, of course, would be reduction of flow to the CSOs. That's not what this was designed for. It's flood protection. When this system is done, you will not see the gateway area flooding. That plagued us starting in 2008, and 2010. I mean, some of these businesses, most people don't realize they get their basement wet and they spend $2,000. Some of these businesses was $45,000, even if it was just a flash, and they got a $25,000 deductible. That hurts your bottom line. So, I mean, we've made a lot of progress to protect, especially the business corridor down Gateway with that one single project. It was 4 contracts, but one single project. All that stuff's tied back together. The one thing that I do want to point out for those that are new on council, administrative consent order, again, that's not something we went out and asked for. Basically, when the Clean Water Act was created back in the 70s, and it evolved through several different processes. In 99, we actually had submitted for a sewer extension on a housing division on the southeast corner of town. We were denied and they said, no more sewer extensions, City of Ottumwa, until you come up with a plan of action and tell us how are you going to go through and address the clean water issue and water quality in your town. So there was a mad scramble to come up with an initial plan, just to come up with the first study, south side of town, trying to get our records updated. A lot of work in the background just to come up with that, to even start a project. And that's one thing Ted had hit on. We were aggressive enough, instead of sitting back on our haunches and not doing anything, we were clear into phase 3. We started phase 3 because this administrative consent order that is law, we have to meet it. We have to meet the timelines that's in here. We'd spent 5 years negotiating this to get, a 25-year schedule instead of a 15. When they come to us originally, they said, you're going to sign this, you're going to get all the work done in 15 years. They don't care how you pay for it. I mean, they're more worried. Their end goal is water quality. Everything else is up to you. So we went down a long road. We were very successful. Some of the people that Ted introduced us clear back in one of our initial DC meetings was Hall and Associates. They're an environmental attorney out of DC, worth every penny that we spent, not only in the grants and stuff that we were able to receive, but more on the legislative processes they put in place and benefited the entire state. There's a lot of programs through the city and the coalition that we formed, which included at first financially just a couple other cities. And even again, we were facing some enormous rate increases. With all of that, everything we put together, we were able to get a lot more grants in this city than most cities, because we were willing to go out and show the need and show that we were making progress, and we kept moving forward.
I have a question, Larry. With taking all of this water out of our sanitary system, of course, we know this means reduced amount of water treated, and also the amount of debris like dirt, sand, whatever gets in our treatment plant. This will reduce the flows at our treatment plant, and also it should reduce the maintenance costs at our treatment plant. Is this reflected in your report?
No, not yet. The problem we have is just Blake's Branch, for instance. Take all the other CSOs out and you got a perfect system, no I&I whatsoever, public or private. It's big enough to overload the plant itself. That's the problem. When we started doing and looking at what does a 1-inch rain-off event actually cause, the north side could be 300 million gallons on just a 1 inch. So I mean, it can overload the plant by itself.
Okay, thank you.
But we have seen a reduction, in the small rain events, stuff like that. We do see reductions at key points in the system.
I have a quick question. This is more of a, are you done?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I
Well,
jumped right
that's
out there.
okay.
Back in 1970, what the Clean Air Act, and this is what's kind of brought all this up, 1970, what was the year that mandate was passed?
74 Clean Water Act.
That's when they put the teeth in the act.
That's when they put the teeth in it. And what year did we react to this?
We started in 99 when they said no more extensions.
When all these laws are passed and things and we're held to, and all of a sudden we scramble at the last minute when they say, okay, finally you have to do this. And we raise sewer rates astronomically and are required now to put that on to our citizens. What can we do different? And what laws do we know that are going to come about that have this kind of power and this teeth? How do we know how to react to these things a little bit more proactively than we did in 1970, whatever it was?
Well, we just have to keep the end goal in mind and understand that you do have to be responsible. You are going to be responsible for the, into pipe water quality. We're moving forward. We've got this administrative consent order, but that doesn't mean we can just quit for 5 years. We still have to look at the private side, and that'll be coming up next. That's not escaped the view or the scope of the DNR. I mean, we have to, as a city, reduce all of that. We've got areas that still overload some of the smaller pump stations every time it rains because roof leaders are still connected to the sanitary, footing drains, big contributor. When you see peaking factors that are in the 20-to-1 ratio, then you're going to have to go into those sub areas and start addressing that. And that's a whole new ball game there. And I don't know if we can get to it this year. Our intent is to start looking at that, see if we can get it framed, get a program in place, and how that's framed is wide open. Every city has done it completely different. And that'll be a really interesting.
Seems like about time you get it figured out, they change the law and you have to do something different.
There are regulation changes coming down. I mean, usually, it's usually 10 years out. Usually you have at least one permit cycle, if not two. So they don't surprise you as much other than, you have to look at how to position yourself and make sure programs are developing. You need to make sure that and I'll give V&K's firm and other firms, they're instrumental in setting in on all those boards. They have their finger on the pulse. They see these things coming, usually a decade out. So we've been very fortunate. I mean, some of these grants are interesting how they develop and how you get to this point.
Well, thank you for all your hard work. Appreciate it.
Would you comment, I think again, and maybe for the council's sake, the value of the time we spent with you when we went to DC. It wasn't just the meetings, those were very helpful and very positive, but just getting to know your firm. And how many cities do you work with here in Iowa? And is there a difference when you work with a landlocked city versus a river city?
Well, we work for, now we have 10 offices in Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, and Missouri. And so it's a huge difference being a river city. And the reality is that most of these sewer systems, when they were built for river cities, were combined sewer systems. And so as of 74, the Clean Water Act did address it, but it took a long time for the EPA and others to even come up to speed on enforcing the rule. And back to your question, the next logical suite is stormwater. And as we speak, EPA is proposing the next group of cities to be impacted by storm sewer rule, including water quality. So what we try to do is stay out in front of it. We've had some great leadership in the League of Cities, which really helps. And you folks know that have gone to the conferences. The voters are really what impacts the state of Iowa, and also on a federal level. And so you need to kind of, understand how it plays out and try to position yourself for the outcome that you'd like to have. So stormwater rules are going to be huge. We'll spend more messing around and trying to treat stormwater than we've spent to date on wastewater. But one thing that the EPA has offered, and we've talked just briefly to the management, integrated planning, and what that says is, which most cities do anyway, you have all these lists of regulatory requirements: water, wastewater, stormwater, clean air, solid waste. It never ends. But as cities, we only have so much money. And so what EPA has said, you put together a schedule and you tell us which one you want to address first. And for their sake, it's mostly pollution prevention. But the other side of it is that we have pensions to pay, we have streets to repair, and all of this is fair game. And there's a few cities now, Boone's one, Keokuk's another, that's saying, slow down the parade here because we only have so much money. And if we don't have growth in property values, we don't have growth in population or industries, how are we to pay for this? And so the strategy is, once you kind of recognize which train's coming the fastest, you try to decide, all right, I'm going to agree to this, and I'm going to try to buy myself as much time as possible. It's got to be good financial arguments. It's got to be good technology arguments. That's what you have to do. And if you don't do that, then you're the ones that sit back and say, oh, woe is me, I didn't know that was happening. Most of this stuff, as Larry says, it just doesn't happen overnight. And you watch when Congress tries to, waters the United States. Well, it's a big deal. It passed. It's been repealed. But the idea is try to shape your city accordingly and get the best advantage. And then because of poverty issues, unemployment issues, hot lunch issues. You shape that into being eligible for those grants. And then, as we've told mayor and manager, say thank you. Get out in front of them and say thank you to FEMA, thank you to the block grant, thank you to the DNR, because really, because of the history and the team effort, they really want you to succeed. And you have shown that, but now once you've become one of the poster child for some compliance, you got to shape it according to what's best for you. And that's my advice to you, is that keep active and be members of the league, but make sure you're the leader in it, because you'll get a better cut out of this than sitting back and complaining.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Larry,
Just one more comment, Matt. I did want to kind of address one of the comments you had made that wasn't included in my last little deal. Each million that we received in grant basically reduced our rate 1%. 1% under our current user system is roughly 55,000, and that's what it takes through a standard SRF loan to do the debt service on $1 million. So, but it's kind of deceiving on the grants. You have to look at not only what we had for just pure sewer separation, you have to look at the ones where we combined other funds to do the street restoration on top of the sewers. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot more grants that we received in conjunction with the sewer, or we combined the funding streams.
I see. Thank you.
I encourage you to look over that report, and if you have any additional questions, call Larry and talk with him about it. It's very complete, and I think it gives you good history and good information for making future decisions. So thank you, Larry. Thank you, Ted and Todd. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good working with you.
Hey, Ted. Got that?
Larry, are you going to make any other comments at this point, or should we move on?
Well, I would say that report, what we reported last year, if it's still active, is then included in the report. Some of the initial information has been dropped off. The first phases, 1, 2, and 3 that were completed are not included in this. What they're interested in is a progressive type report. That information is available. I can give you the original one, and you can kind of combine the two to get the full picture.
Okay, item E on our agenda. Anybody in the audience that wants to address any issue on the agenda, please give us do you have any names or? Okay. Then we'll move on. Item F, we have a recommendation.
Ottumwa Public Safety Advisory Board recommendations. Recommendation, approve OPSAP recommendations.
Your Honor, I would move to amend the recommendation to approve item number 2 and pull item number 1 out for separate discussion and vote.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Do you want to go ahead with your amendment?
You want a motion, or do you want? Yeah, at this point, I would like to make a motion to approve the request and have the city install an additional crosswalk at the intersection of Cooper and 4th Streets with the proper signage.
Just to be clear on that, that would be the crosswalk at Cooper and 4th Street?
Yes, Cooper and 4th Streets.
Okay, that's Matt's recommendation. Okay.
That's my motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Larry, you want to make some comments?
I will make a comment. For line of sight, most likely we'll come back through a safety committee viewpoint and look at parking and see what we have to do right along that section to allow view of kids in a crosswalk versus parking. So we'll have to look at that from a design standard.
You're saying you want to vote 2, 3, and 4? The clerk is instructing me that we did not take a vote on 2, 3, and 4. that you amended the original motion, so we need to vote on that first before we get down to the one that you're currently talking about. So I would entertain a motion to approve items 2, 3, and 4.
What we need to do is just vote on the motion as amended, since they pulled out item number 1 to talk about separately. And
Okay,
we need to vote on 2, 3, and 4 as the first motion. And
okay.
then item 1 will be separate motion.
So you want to make the motion?
We don't need a motion, we just need a roll call.
Okay, do the roll call.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Okay. Now we're talking about item number 1 in the amendment. So, Matt, you made the motion. Do you want to make any other comments? And then Larry can make some comments back.
I received the letter from Principal Hendred here regarding the crosswalk. And after going to the area, I was just reading the traffic committee recommendation. I've noticed that there are other schools in town that have multiple. And so the reason I wanted to pull this item out and expand on it here a little bit was I believe they have, one other crosswalk, making it a total of 2 right now as it currently is at Wilson.
They have their main one at
The
the main entrance.
Is there one behind the school now?
Yes.
That would make the second one.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I don't see that this would be too far out of the scope of being possible, and especially for the safety of our students, that being within an area that's, in between 2 large hills. That was the reason I pulled that out and wanted to have a separate vote on. I don't see that that's too big an ask.
Larry, there's also one at Iowa Avenue and 4th. I'm not sure that's related to the school, but I don't know why it wouldn't be. But I noticed there's advanced warning signs, but when you get to the actual crossing, I don't believe there's a sign that has the figure on it with the arrow pointing down, and maybe it's not intended to be that way. But I just wondered if you are familiar with that or would look at that.
We can look at that. That wasn't looked at. Iowa and 4th was not looked at in regards to this.
I had a question. On the crosswalks, does there have to be a sign at each crosswalk, or do they work in conjunction with each other? Do they have to be separate? Can you have just a crosswalk, in a school area without the yellow sign with the 2 individuals on it, or how does that?
Usually they're in combination. Each circumstance is slightly different. Look at it. I mean, to give you the thought that we had, at least at our meeting, was not only is it fairly close to the other one, which is the main entrance, but we were trying to, or at least in our mind, discourage parents that simply stop on 4th and let them out and they run across the street. If you look at the number of houses that are on that side coming from the east, I think there's 4 homes in that area. So I guess considering there's no sidewalk at the practice field and other things, what you're encouraging is cars stopping, on 4th, letting their kids out. They're going to have to come around cross traffic if they're westbound. If they're eastbound, of course, they're going to let them off. They're going to be against the curb or the buses. Most of the schools have discouraged kids from trying to go in between buses. They now pull their buses or attempt to pull the buses almost bumper to bumper because they do not want kids darting in between traffic. That was kind of the general thought. And again, we'd have to go back now and look at parking on 4th at the crosswalk because one thing you don't want is traffic flowing through there and a kid darting out. Sometimes traffic crosswalks that are painted, kids have a tendency to think they're a little safer in that and don't pay as much attention without the actual stop sign and a watching guard.
Principal Hendred indicated that he was paying extra attention to the crosswalk itself and would be
Good
standing
point.
out there, I believe, too. That would help.
Good point, Matt. I think Mr. Morris and I did also go and visit with Principal Hendred and walk the area. He indicated he was going to be himself out there with his orange gloves and directing traffic, keeping an eye on that, because I think the parents have decided, I don't think we've decided, the parents have decided they're coming down 4th and dropping kids off, and it's become another entrance versus what we think is the front of the building. So, any other questions or comments from other council? Okay, Amanda, would you read the motion that we're working on then, the amendment?
This is the motion to approve item number 1, the crosswalk at,
So that's.
and not deny.
Okay. So are you clear on what you're voting on?
Yes is a vote to approve it.
Yes.
That's correct. Okay, then take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
It passes. Okay, thank you.
Approval of collective bargaining agreement by and between the City of Ottumwa, Iowa and the Team Local 238 representing transit employees commencing July 1, 2016 and continuing through June 30, 2020. Recommendation, approve the collective bargaining agreement commencing July 1, 2016, continuing through June 30, 2020.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Joni, you're up.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is the last of 6 contracts that we've negotiated with our union within the city this fall, and this is the transit contract. Again, it's a 4-year contract. It's in line with all of the other contracts. First year, it's a 3%. The next 3 years would be a 2% each year. And there were a couple of very minor changes in the contract language. And the union did meet the other night and did ratify the contract.
Any questions for Joni?
I just had one. I had sent a question out earlier about Article 5, the points that were stricken in there, and you had made light to the ACA is what caused the change on that. Has it been since 2014 that they have been paid for those particular items?
That at one point in time, the contract covered 1015 regional transit bus drivers as well as our city transit drivers. So those contract provisions related to those drivers that lived in outlying counties such as Davis and Appanoose. Mahaska County, and there are several other counties that are involved. Because of the ACA, 1015 had contracted with us to manage their transit agency, and those employees were our employees. But with the ACA, we were required to, or they were required to, if they wanted to stay with us, they had to limit those drivers to 25 hours of work per week. And that would have decimated their regional transit agency. So they pulled out of the agreement with us, mutually agreed upon. And now those employees are their employees. And they're able, because they're a small employer, we're considered a large employer under those ACA regs. Since they're a small employer, then they're able to work them almost full-time. Each week, and they wouldn't have the limitation they would have if they remained our employee. So we just removed contract language that pertained to those type of drivers.
Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Fee increase proposal for the Beach Ottumwa. Recommendation, approve the fee increase for the Beach Ottumwa.
Is there a motion?
Recommendation as presented.
Second.
Good evening, Jane, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Proposed fee increases for the Beach Ottumwa are listed below. In 2010, the daily admission fee for the Beach Ottumwa was lowered from $9.63 per day to $5 per day. The fees at the beach have not been increased in many years. Approving these fee increases will result in approximately $15,000 in additional revenue for the beach. And these fees will take effect February 1st, 2016, if approved. These fee increases were approved by the Ottumwa Parks Advisory Board at their meeting on January 12th, 2016. And I also did a comparison with some other water parks in Iowa and found that the beach fees are, in almost every case, they're low compared to other water parks. The most important fee we're raising is the daily summer admission fee, which is currently $5. We want to raise that up to $6. That's our big money maker in the summertime. And we're also eliminating the $55 summer pass and raising the daily indoor admission fee only from $3 to $4. So I'll be glad to answer any questions that anyone.
Any questions for Gene?
I think, Your Honor, I think it's just important to comment. I'm sorry, Mark, I'm jumping out here every time. I was at the Parks Advisory Board meeting, just observing it, and I know they, struggled getting that down years ago from 963. And I know they did, deliberate over the child amount here. It was $6, and they went and voted to do that at $2. But I just wanted to make a comment and say this is not, in any way an attempt to totally cover all the losses at the beach. This was just something that, comparatively speaking, looking at other water parks, this was something to get us just at the low bottom, the low end of that comparative scale. I didn't want anybody to think this was a way we're trying to make up some of those by just raising fees. That's not the intent of this. It is one of the small things we can do to start that process.
Correct.
Monroe?
First of all, thank you for the comparison with the other facilities. I think that helps a lot. But I do have one question. After the rate was decreased several years back, why has it taken so many years fast forward to actually do any sort of inflationary increase?
Well, I discussed this with Andy's predecessor a few times, and he said, just leave the fee where it is, basically. And one of the reasons was it worked. It worked to bring large amounts of people back into the beach, even though it didn't raise our revenue that much, but it helped bring big crowds back to the beach. They bought more concessions, they spent money, and it kept the kids off the streets. And, first and foremost, the beach is a recreational facility. And to that extent, lowering the fee worked. The $9.63 was just too much. $5, like I say, it brought people into the beach, but it's really a little bit too low.
So do you see going forward that there'll be a little bit more regular increases in rates?
I'd be very careful about raising the fees any higher than this. Let's try it this year and see what our attendance is. If we're going to go above $6 for the daily admission fee, I really feel we need to add some new features first, or make some improvements, or start making some of the $2.7 million worth of repairs before we consider raising the fees anymore. And really what the fees at the beach boil down to are what are people willing to pay in this particular marketplace.
In the past, didn't you sell family passes that you started selling after the first of the year, or people could buy them for Christmas presents or whatever?
The way I understand it, they used to have family passes at the beach in the 1990s and the early 2000s, but at some point, I think it was around 2005 or 06, they eliminated the family pass, and we've never had family passes as long as I've been here. And one of the problems with family passes is it's difficult to define what a family is, or actually determine whether that child or that person that shows up is actually a member of that family pass. It's difficult to enforce, is what I'm saying.
How did you arrive at the number $6? What factors were involved with determining that number?
Yeah, I looked at what they're charging at other similar water parks in Iowa. And like I said, $5, it was obviously too low. I've got a pretty good feeling of what people in this area are willing to pay to get into the beach. And I know that when I started this job here, my first week, I had probably close to 200 phone calls from people saying that $9.63 was too much. I've also learned from experience that raising an admission fee for a recreational facility too much all at one time will cause us to lose customers, and also it'll make some people angry. So I've learned that the best way to do it is small increments.
Mr. Mayor, just one point. I applaud Gene for the research work he's done on this. I would just put this into context. At the community I came from, our daily passes were $8. And if you just put this in perspective, if you're going to go into, as an example, say a YMCA or a similar health facility, you're going to pay probably $10 at a minimum on a daily pass to get in. Myself anyway, I think it's wise to lower that and keep that amount relatively tame as as Gene indicated. But I would echo what Gene said. I'd be very careful about increasing it incrementally then, because then it can lead to, quite frankly, loss, and people are going to have other options. Go ahead. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I just got one question, just out of curiosity, on some of these other water parks that are at 6, like Bettendorf, Cedar Falls, how did their facilities with what they offer compare to ours?
Okay, most of these other water parks, they're outdoors only. They do not have indoor swimming pools attached to their outdoor water parks. And for the most part, their outdoor water parks are smaller than the beach. Some of them are in, well, most of them are in higher income areas. People have more discretionary income. But the exceptions are Kings Point and Spirit Lake. That's one of the places that has one of the few wave pools in Iowa. And that's a resort area. They have a water park that's like the beach, but they also have a lazy river. Lost Island and Waterloo, that's more in the Adventureland category. That's much larger with a lot of different features, and they keep adding new features every year, so they can afford to charge that much. Clive, West Des Moines, Cedar Falls, and Bettendorf, they're all very similar to the beach and maybe slightly smaller.
Thank you very much for that.
Okay, are you ready to vote then? Okay, motion's been made and seconded to increase the fees as proposed tonight. You want to take the roll, please?
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the Ferry Street reconstruction project. I've received no objections on this item.
Go ahead, Larry.
This project will consist of approximately 525 linear feet of complete full width, full depth Portland concrete cement pavement reconstruction along Ferry Street between Chester and Finley Ave. The project will be let, and it's planned to be built while the school is in recess. I will want to point out one thing. The engineer's estimate, originally when we created this, we used just a slightly older estimate. It should be $186,508.20.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so if there's anyone that wants to address the council on this item. Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So
Move to
moved.
close.
Thanks, Mark. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Matt.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Resolution number 6, 2016, approving the plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the Ferry Street reconstruction project. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 6, 2016.
Is there a motion?
Move as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
Thanks, Skip. And that is with the revised figure that Larry gave us, so, okay? Take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the HMA PCC Street Crack Repair Program 2016. I've received no objections on this item.
Go ahead, Larry.
This project is one of our annual preventative maintenance programs and consists of sealing cracks in both hot mix asphalt and Portland concrete pavement. The process is critical to extending the useful life of the HMA mats. Each year we budget $50,000 from the expanded street repair program. Streets scheduled for this year include the following. They're listed. I don't think I'll read all of those. Bids will be received and opened by the City of Ottumwa on February 10, 2016 at 2 p.m. A bid report and bid award recommendation will be presented to the City Council on February 16, 2016, or at a later date as determined by staff. The budget amount is $50,000 from the expanded street repair program.
This is a public hearing. Again, anyone that would like to address the council? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close.
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Resolution number 13, 2016, approving the plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the HMA PCC Street Crack Repair Program 2016. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 13, 2016.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as read.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. No questions for Larry? Let's take the vote.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the North Court Street Reconstruction Project, Albany to Maple. I've received no objections on this item.
Go ahead, Larry.
This project will consist of the full-depth, full-width PCC reconstruction of North Court from Albany to Maple. Over the years, North Court had numerous water main breaks that have damaged large section of North Court. Waterworks has completed installation of a new main from Pennsylvania to Maple and on down that street. They have agreed to pay the amount of the patch, and for engineering design fees, the city would cover the balance of construction cost and inspection to replace the remaining area over the completed projects. Bids will be received and opened by the City of Ottumwa on February 10th, 2016, and a bid report and bid award recommendation will be presented to the City Council on February 16th, 2016, or at a later date determined by staff. The engineer's estimate is $275,000. Waterworks patch would be $85,000. The funding is lost at $136 and reallocated CIP from 2013 at $50.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so is there anyone that wants to address this item? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the meeting.
So move.
Thank you, Skip. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Resolution number 16, 2016, approving the plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the North Court Street Reconstruction Project, Albany to Maple. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 16, 2016.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Larry, you won't believe it, but I had two people today who asked about that very section, and I told them it was on the agenda, so people are looking forward to getting the washboard fixed.
That's a rough area.
Thank you. Is there any other comment or question? If not, let's take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the Lamborn Street Sewer Improvements Project. I received no objections on this item.
Okay, go ahead, Larry.
This project consists of the separation of a combined sanitary and storm sewer system on Lamboard. The project was previously bid, but due to a late letting date, only one bid was received, and that bid was substantially higher and was rejected. Bids will be received and opened by the City of Ottumwa on February 10th, 2016 at 2 p.m. The bid report and bid recommendation will be presented to the council on February 16th, 2016, or later date is determined by staff. The project is being funded by Lost.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone that wants to address the council? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move. Second.
Okay, thank you. Take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Resolution number 17, 2016, approving the plans, specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the Lamborn Street Sewer Improvements Project. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 17, 2016.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions for Larry?
Will this work be done behind the curb, or you have to tear out part of the street?
Most of it will be done on the west side of the street. We do have to cross, so there will be a patch on the discharge end.
Has that street been paved recently, overlaid, anything done to it?
Not Lamborn. Then we're going to follow up with an overlay. That's the
you.
reason that has been delayed a couple years, was to get this project done first.
Good thinking.
Good comment. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Please take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the authorization of a loan disbursement agreement of notes to evidence the obligation of the city thereunder. I received no objections to this item.
Good evening, Bob. You have the
Good evening,
floor.
Your Honor. This is a public hearing that's required prior to the issuance of additional debt. We are amending the SRF loan from September of 2014. Then these funds will be used to finance 2 extended detention dry basins in the Harrells Branch watershed, 6 basins in the Memorial Park, and the restoration of 9.44 acres of oak savanna in Memorial Park.
This also is a public hearing. Is there anyone who wants to address the council? Seeing none, I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Resolution number 20, 2016, instituting proceedings to take additional action for the authorization of a loan disbursement agreement and the issuance of not to exceed $305,000 sewer revenue capital loan notes. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 20, 2016.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Your Honor, I have a question.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Bob, we talked about this already, and it's a question I want to ask again, just so that the public can hear the answer to this, just to make sure it's clear. The capital loan notes in this SRF loan do have to do with the issues we're having in Memorial Park to put in these retention dams. If we were to change the footprint of the project or move it around somewhat, this would not hold us to exactly what we have planned at this point, which is the 9.44 acres of oak savanna. If we chose to kind of juggle that around a little bit, that wouldn't tie us to have to follow exactly what we have now, correct?
That is correct. If you'll recall, whenever we do issue any type of debt service, we will determine the amount of the bonds that we need, and then we'll normally get authorization for a little bit above that in case once everything gets finalized, it comes out to be a little bit more. We just need to make sure we don't go over that amount. We could not borrow anything on this, and we'd be in no other situation than the fact that we went through the procedures that would have allowed us to do so.
Right. Thank you for clearing that up.
Any other questions for Bob? Hearing none, let's take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Resolution number 21, 2016, declaring an official intent under Treasury Regulation 1.1502 to issue debt to reimburse the city for certain original expenditures paid in connection with specified projects. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 21, 2016.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions for Bob? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Resolution number 2, 2016, approving change order number 4 for the 2014 Stormwater Pump Station Improvements Project and authorizing seating agreement. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 2, 2016.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead, Larry.
During the construction of the Lagoon Pump Station, we requested the contractor to extend the Gabion wall. This will allow the continued use of the alternate water supply line that is part of the Ottumwa water and hydro intake system. We have also requested the contractor remove seating item to allow closure of the main contract. We have agreed to enter into a separate written agreement with the contractor, which maintains the contract amount for seating in the spring. Change order 4 increased the contract amount by $11,570. New contract amount will be $3,461,691.
Any questions for Larry on this change order? Okay, take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Resolution number 8, 2016, approving the professional services agreement with Garden and Associates for the 2015 sanitary sewer rehabilitation project. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 8, 2016.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead, Larry.
Thank you, Mayor. Part of the long-term control plan included the elimination of the Richmond CSO, or the combined sewer outfall. This project is one more step in that direction and consists of lining sanitary sewer lines in the Richmond Basin area. This project, once completed, will allow for evaluating the pre-existing Richmond pump station to determine the final solution related to its capacity. The City of Ottumwa applied for and received a CDBG grant to help fund this project. The overall project is estimated at $1.6 million for construction, and the grant will cover $800,000. The attached agreement is for design services to review the sanitary collection system and determine final scope, spot repair, and prepare needed plan sets and specifications. The proposal is divided into the base design and construction phases.
Any questions for Larry? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Resolution number 11, 2016, approving the adjustment for engineering services agreement between the City of Ottumwa and Garden and Associates for the Church Street reconstruction project, Richmond Avenue to Ransom Street, and authorize the mayor to sign the proposal. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 11, 2016.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions for Larry on this item?
I got a quick question here.
Okay.
When we ran over on days on the Church Street project, could you explain how that works for professional services, Garden and Associates? When a contractor runs over on their time, we go ahead and we get charged a penalty apparently for the amount of days, but then we still have to carry over that fee for the professional services, the engineering services.
That's correct. Typically, you have to show damages for working day charges. On that one, we looked at the additional work that we required the contractor to perform. Anytime you agree with a contractor to do anything, you also attach working days at that time. When we got done, the liquidated damages come up to $23,100. That money is used to offset whatever your additional inspection fees would be. Because when you set up these contracts, it's usually based on so many working days. You estimate them in the beginning, but a lot of times, like I said, when we run into additional work and different change orders throughout the project, that increases the working days. Those are legitimate, so you don't recover a penalty for those days, so you don't have that money to cover the inspection costs for that day.
Am I reading this wrong, or did the amount we recovered in damages for being over on working days equal a lot less than what we owe for the engineering services, the extra?
It is less. It's about $10,000 less.
So the damages we collected, we actually lost $10,000. It cost the city money.
Yes, but again, when you go back and you look at the number of change orders that were included in the base contract, you assign certain days. You know, if you add work or there's unforeseen construction issues that arise and you give them 2 days, you still are going to have an additional 2 days worth of inspection, but you don't also collect the penalty for days that are approved.
Sure. Thank you.
Any other clarification or questions? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Resolution number 14, 2016, approving change order number 10 for Contract 2, Division 1, of the 2010 Flood Protection Mitigation Project. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 14, 2016.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Go ahead, Larry.
Change order 10 is for the additional compensation for installing a pre-transfer switch from the pump controls to the standpipe generator. Work included installing and programming the switch. The pre-signal is enhanced to provide how much delay from to in each source. 5 second, 10 second is an example. On this one, it's set at 30 seconds. It also allows for the transfer to and pump delay. You can actually go from 0 to 30 minutes depending on the current system flow. This change order increases the contract by $572. And the new contract amount will be $7,900,000. $111,646.40. And again, this is one of the 4 projects that's being funded by FEMA grant and CDBG grant.
Any questions for Larry on this one? Okay, take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Resolution number 26, 2016, approve the contract to provide water pollution control facility with general wastewater consulting and services to HDR Incorporated of Des Moines, Iowa. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 26, 2016.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Good evening, Cam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. A request for qualifications along with a list of potential projects was sent out to 8 reputable engineering firms with whom we were familiar in the state of Iowa. We received back 7 statements of qualifications. That candidate list was reviewed and narrowed down to 3. Those 3 firms each gave a presentation and were interviewed. A 7-member selection committee chose HDR of Des Moines, Iowa, to provide general wastewater consulting engineering services to the water pollution control facility.
Any questions for Cam on this proposal? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cam. This is a time for public, anybody in the audience that wants to address an item that's not necessarily on our agenda this evening. I have 2 hands. Okay, come on up, Connie, and we'll start with you. Identify yourself, please, for the council.
Good evening. I'm Connie Hammersley Wilson. I'm the Executive Director of the Ottumwa Chamber of Commerce, and that is who I'm here representing today. We have a very unique situation in Ottumwa I've been doing research on for the last year. As I've been traveling around the state with my previous job, and with this job, I'm finding that Ottumwa is unique in the way that we have a lot of women in key positions of leadership, from plant manager at Alliant to our city attorney, president of our college, and the list can go on and on. And I was doing this research, I was thinking, we need to find a way to celebrate this and to let people know how progressive Ottumwa is and how forward-thinking we are. So I came up with bringing Lisa Carlson and bringing her Women, Wine, and Whiskey workshop to Ottumwa. So don't let it's a tagline. So wine is for the smooth days, the days, where you kind of go home and go, yeah, this is a, great day. And the whiskey days, of course, are the days where it's a little bit more challenging, but you find your way through it. Men have been workshopping and networking since the Greek times. And this is a time for women to step up and learn how to do that networking and that workshop format. So that's what we're going to be doing at Bridgeview Center on February the 19th from 1 to 4 p.m. There'll be a luncheon ahead that you can order separately that Bridgeview is providing. And then we'll have the workshop. We have very distinguished panel. Marlene Sprouse, president of Indian Hills Community College. Terry Messerschmidt, the president of South Ottumwa Savings Bank. Carol Cullum, the president of KTVO. And then myself. So hopefully, I'm looking for about 200 women to participate. It should be just a phenomenal, if it goes as well as I think it is. This will be an annual event, and we'll just kind of change it up every year. But like I said, Ottumwa in this region is unique in its support of women in roles of leadership, and this is our opportunity to promote and support and celebrate that. So please invite the distinguished women that are serving in our city, and several boards, business members, business owners, and I thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak. I'll take any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Connie?
Not necessarily a question,
Comments?
but I do think that this is a great event for the city, and I'm glad that you've come forward and put this together, because I do think that we are more progressive than some people might feel, and this is just one way that we can prove that. So
Appreciate that.
hats off to you.
Thank you. Thank you. And hats off to the ladies. So, all right, well, thank you. Anything
I
else?
got one quick
Yes.
comment. Of course, I always got to add my last 2 cents. That's
Well,
nothing
that
new.
works.
I just want to tell you thank you for the job you're doing at the chamber. You're always a nice, bubbly, smiling face down there.
Thank
which
you.
we've needed for a long time. But anyway, thank you for doing this, and thank you for coming before the council and letting us know what you're doing. That's always kind of fun and exciting, and reminding you that whiskey is not always for the hard days, too.
That's exactly, that's probably true, and we'll probably learn that.
Absolutely.
So, Tassel Ridge Winery has stepped up to the plate. They're making a label with this on it, so we're real excited about that, and lots of businesses have stepped up and sponsored. So I thank you, and I thank you for your kind words, and I feel very blessed to be in the position I'm in, so I thank you for that.
Thank you for
Okay.
sharing with us, Connie.
Appreciate it.
I think the lady in the back of the audience raised her hand. Would you come up and identify yourself, please?
Thank you for letting me address you.
Why don't you pull that down and speak right into it? Thank you.
Thank you for letting me address you. My name is Nancy Mendiblis. I live at 713 South Madison here in Ottumwa. What I'd like to address you over is the article that was in the paper concerning mental patients being incarcerated here. As you know, I have been standing up against law enforcement here for 14 years and have protested off and on for 7. What I'd like to say, I have been incarcerated down here, and I was made fun of by certain law officials because I am through the mental system. It was told to my friends that I'm standing up against law enforcement because me being through the mental system, that is a lie. I'm standing up against cops and sheriff people here because of the abuse they inflict upon people. And I believe history will repeat itself because there is a pattern of abuse by law enforcement when it comes to mental patients through our jail and on our streets. I believe this needs to be addressed to the city council and by the mayor. The incarceration of them. The thing is we do not have a unit here. When people are brought into your hospital, there is no mental unit here in Ottumwa except for Ottumwa Regional Health Center, which is for people 50 years and older. You know, we have lost resources here. I've looked into this. There is a big percentage of suicides here. I know a young woman that she was depressed, and her daughter is a friend of my family. Her mother just committed suicide. We are sitting in a town where it's a very high percentage, and some of this should be looked into. What I'd like to say is, why is it when people are incarcerated down here for more than 2 months, some of them come out of there and state they're not fed, they're not given milk? Isn't our county supposed to take care of our incarcerated people? Isn't the money supposed to go towards them to have a healthy meal and to have whole milk? Where's the money go? If they're not being fed, where's the money going? It's got to be going in somebody's pocket, is my opinion. The starvation and this should be stopped, looked into. Why I want to address you over some of these issues, I wish you city council members would go and sit down there in your jail and your sheriff's department for at least a week.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. I think you've made your point, and we will certainly refer this. The jail is operated by Wapello County. We'll refer it and talk with our chief about it. Thank you for your comments, and we'll be glad to visit with you in more detail. Okay?
Long as the abuse goes on with law enforcement here and your sheriff's department, I will stand up against it. and I will continue.
Okay.
I'm not giving up. This is my hometown. I was born here. I was raised here the majority of my life. And Ottumwa has changed. It's changed. I have told people, I feel pathetic that I live here.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I'd like to make a few comments about a few items that have happened recently, and I think let's start with a real positive. We had a all-city-wide Martin Luther King celebration last night at the First Methodist Church, and I'd like to personally compliment Jeff Hendred, who pulled that together. It was a great evening with Indian Hills, the high school Meister Singers, students from Liberty School, and a guest speaker who had a very personally touching story about her family's survival as a refugee. So again, hats off to Jeff, and every year that program has gotten better and stronger. Some other good news, I was in Ames this weekend, and I want you to know that the Nerd Herd Team 363 that presented to you about a month ago got a first place recognition for their research and innovation in their project on how to educate us about microbeads. Remember, they came and talked to us and their research manual was outstanding. So that's a great compliment. Our other teams did well, but they were recognized first place. Thirdly, I'd like to mention that this weekend, a number of city department heads and city officials will be in Des Moines to find out about RAGBRAI. The announcement party is Saturday, sponsored by the Des Moines Register, and we will be present. We have not been told anything except we need to be there. So we're going to be there, and I hope we can come back with some good news for you. With that, I would ask, is there any business from any of the councilmen? If not, Mr. Morris, anything from you?
I don't have anything, Mayor.
Okay, then I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Thank you, Skip. Is there a second? Okay.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Thank you, and good evening, and drive safely on the snow.